Hello and welcome to Screen Views. I'm Dave.
I'm James.
And this is the weekly podcast where we give our views on a film and TV show.
Each episode is unscripted, unedited, so anything could happen. Listeners should be aware that we do include spoilers, so feel free to fast forward, rewind, or simply buckle up and enjoy a somewhat coherent conversation.
Our podcast is based on the idea that there's no such thing as a bad movie. Therefore, for every review, we'll give a recommendation instead of a rating.
But first up, we're going to have a quick discussion about what we talked about last week to see if our opinions have changed.
Here we are, James. Hello.
Yeah.
Episode 4? We're on 4 now?
Yeah.
I think. Okay, good. So, last week, Ready Player One.
Yep.
Any changes? Any thoughts that are differing from your review last week?
No, I'm a little bit more confident in my review last week, and I was a bit speaking to more people. And in terms of word of mouth, there are a few people who have got like mixed feelings of it. But like I say, media-wise, everybody just seems to be raving about it, and so I feel a little bit more confident because I was a little bit worried that I might have like brought like a downer to last week's episode. So,
well, and I think that's part of the reason why we do the podcast, isn't it? So we can have differing views. It'd be a bit boring if we agreed on everything.
Yeah.
But you say word of mouth. Like, has anybody? Is it just confirming what you thought in terms of the Frankenstein style?
Yeah.
Mashup.
Yeah. It's a lot of people just didn't really like it as a whole cohesive movie. They like parts of it. And like the Shining scene seems to be brought up in conversation quite a lot. But overall, yeah, it's good, but it's not people's favourite at all.
Yeah. Oh, apart from mine, maybe.
Well, no, favourite.
Well, no,
favourite Spielberg.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
like,
the biggest quote that's going out there saying,
yeah, that means
Spielberg's back and it's better than ever.
But he never went away, and also, I still stand by what I said, which is that if anybody says it's his best movie, then they're a crazy person, or probably like 7 years old and haven't seen anything else.
Yeah.
So I think my stance still hasn't changed. I haven't seen it again.
No,
I want to see it again. Maybe my views would change if I saw it again, because I might feel a little bit differently, a bit less excited from my initial reaction.
Yeah.
But I think I really want to see it again. So I don't think my opinion has changed on that.
Okay.
And I suppose the only thing that I would maybe comment on is the references thing. I can really see why people would hate the references, because there's so many and they are quite in your face, and so I can see that. And I think it's that thing where movies are always about references. They're always about what has come before, and so yeah, I mean, maybe it's better to keep them a bit more subtle. But I thought it was fun. I just enjoyed it, and I want to see it again. Yeah. So
I was saying to a friend of mine, what they could have done, rather than having all these, it felt like sponsorships, they could have gone to like game companies and sort of work out a deal to see what they're working on now, what's coming out in like 1 year, 2 years time, and they probably haven't done it, but it'd be really cool. Like in 2 or 3 years time, there's references to a new video game that's not even been released yet.
Yeah, I mean that would be quite clever, but yeah, I do still quite like the historical, game development, from the design point of view, and acknowledging those creators that perhaps doesn't happen enough within culture and society.
No.
Because it's interesting, when you watch a movie, it's instantly about the actors. Then there's maybe a discussion about the director.
Yeah.
Whereas when you play a computer game, I feel like a lot of people, because there's so many people that work on it, a lot of people aren't really interested in the designer and what they were thinking and that sort of thing. Maybe it happens a little bit with Metal Gear Solid or something like that, where there's a bit more of an auteurship going on. But I think it's good that it's sort of raising that debate.
I watched like 2 documentaries recently. One's about the creation of like Spider-Man 2 on PS2, and how they developed like the swinging motion, and also about Crash Bandicoot 2. and they're really interesting, and I really got to see the amount of people involved in it. And with this film, I don't think it properly really displays the amount of work that goes into creating games, because it still idolizes just one person. I mean, even in the film industry, I think the general public aren't really, we idolize the director, and or the director, mainly the director, when we know that there's a lot of work goes into it. And I know even I can even get into the mindset of the caterer. The way the caterer will probably go to set, wants to make sure all these guys are good. It's like feel part of the team. It's like when you watch a new movie, any small job, even down to like a caterer, they're part of making this movie. They're part of like their ambition. I've tried to. I don't know. I just feel like it's such a collaboration.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you know, the director is only as good as his team, really, or her team.
Yeah.
And I think that's I think that's important within a lot of creative industries, is that, you know, there are so many factors and so many people that go into making something. You know, I think Ready Player One is good for just sort of raising that debate. Yeah. You know, the very fact that we're talking about it now is through this film. So, you know, maybe a good starting point. But yeah, I agree. It perhaps doesn't go into the collaboration of creating a game enough. So, I think, you know, what it does do is talk about like how, you know, games are about a social event, and I think that's a really good aspect to the movie as well. But so just moving on, James, to talk about I Love Dick. Anything to add from our discussion last week?
No, not really. Not about the show. Not about the show itself. I think we did because it's a very it is a show which you can take a lot out of it. It's not really it's not spoon feeding you, and so the amount of conversation we could have on I Love Dick, I think we've done some good discussions. I've got a feeling that we could do a whole other podcast on that. I'd talk about completely different things. Yeah,
definitely.
And that's the sort of show it is.
Well, there's so much going on that it's difficult to cover everything. I know we did a pretty good job with our epic hour and 45-minute podcast last week, but you know, I think it's important. I think we had a lot to say about Ready Player One and I Love Dick. And so I think, you know, that's a good thing, because you know, like I say, when we have different views on a movie, that's good, because it gives us lots to talk about. But also when a show like I Love Dick gives you that variety, gives you that something to think about. It's not, like you say, spoon feeding you, and you can go away and think about it, go back to it, watch some more, think about it some more. Is a really good show for many different reasons and layers, and I think I would encourage anybody to go out and see it. Like we said last week, just watch the first episode, see if it's for you or not. And
if it's not, then it's only half an hour, but by 15 minutes you'll know.
You're not like sort of wasted your time and energy. But, okay. All right, cool. So should we move on to the section, the main section of our podcast? Where
Did you hear that?
You're going to have so much fun doing that. So, Quiet Place. So, this is a film essentially about a quiet place. The title is quite helpful there. But, I mean, essentially it's sort of a thriller, horror, mystery, creature, drama film. So, you know, you kind of don't want to say too much, because like for somebody who hasn't seen it, you can give away a lot of this movie, but obviously we're going to include some spoilers in this discussion, so if you haven't seen it yet, you might want to avoid that. But so should we start with Jim or John? Should get the names right, shouldn't I?
The director. So he's in the office, and him and Emily Blunt are married, and I just felt like This was such. I didn't expect to like this film.
So him and Emily Blunt.
Yeah, married real life.
In real life.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and the media was soaking it up. Oh, they do. They get all these interviews and they say
loving it.
Yeah. The media was soaking it up.
How much of your real marriage was in the film?
But I've always liked Emily Blunt.
Yes.
And and John Krasinski, I was unsure. I thought The Office was okay. And I never really got into it. But yeah, he sold me from the trailer, and it was a real passion project for him. And I didn't realize that he directed it until after I saw it. And so I'm getting all these facts after I saw. Yeah,
because you've seen it twice, haven't you?
Yeah, I've seen it twice. I'm going to see it third time tonight.
Yes. So we can probably guess where James's stance on this film is. But yeah, so he was American Office fame. Obviously, he's had a lot of people helping him create this movie. Michael Bay included in the.
This was his third movie,
producing.
I believe. Yeah.
Third movie.
Yeah.
That he's directed.
Yeah. So the other ones haven't really kicked off that well.
Oh, that's interesting because IMDb, when you look on IMDb, it doesn't actually list director as one of his sort of talents.
Yeah, I think they're really low movies.
Right. But, when you say low, do you mean low budget or?
I think low budget and low impact.
Right. So this one is getting a bit more traction.
Yeah.
I think that. I think there's probably a reason for that. Sorry, just going back to
Michael Bay.
No, let's. No, I was going to say Emily Blunt. I was just going to talk about the fact that I think she's done some interesting films in recent times. Obviously she's doing some quite mainstream films like Mary Poppins Returns or and some like animation. She does lots of voiceovers, doesn't she? I think. But things like Sicario and Girl on the Train, this film
refuses to be to be typecasted. She could have easily, because she was amazing in Edge of Tomorrow, and then she could have easily just fitted into like the new action role,
right? Yeah.
But then she hasn't gone for that. Yeah. She's really good at it, and she's not the new horror woman, because she could not do another horror again, or she could do it again. And so I think when you see an actress and you know she's good in the variety of stuff, it's really strong.
Got a variety, like a range. Yeah, I suppose the relationship aspect, they're obviously in a relationship in the film, and they do a really good job of that, I guess.
Yeah.
I can see why interviewers would jump on the whole, real life.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting. I think it's good to see someone like Emily Blunt just not going down a straightforward path, like you say.
Yeah.
And this movie is definitely like.
Not straightforward.
It's not straightforward. No. I suppose that's why genre sort of comes into it.
Yeah. When I mentioned it's like a thriller, a horror, and a drama, but it's like them three different things separated. So in certain moments of the film, it will be so it isn't like a thriller, horror, drama. It's some parts are a thriller, some parts are horror, and a lot of it's just a really interesting, nice drama. And it's definitely a character-driven film. Yeah. Which is when it comes to the horror genre, something that lacks quite a lot.
Yeah.
You try to focus on building up a story.
Yeah, I suppose that's for me why it fits quite well into the thriller area, because thriller is one of those sort of genres that's quite difficult to define sometimes. Yeah. And so you can tap into elements of horror and drama to create something interesting for the audience. Yeah. But there are the sort of typical tension building thriller sort of moments throughout the film. Yeah. That were quite straightforward for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I say horror, it's probably like a minute, maybe two, maybe between the 1 and 5 minutes, I'd say, is horror in this movie.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose. How would you define horror in that sense then?
AdSense. So in terms of like when it comes to, I don't know. It's really yeah.
Well,
I just think the things with the creatures and the creatures are quite horrific in terms of like. Well, I'll just say they fit into a horror genre more than
I think that is fair to say. Partly because you've got, horror for me is about primal fears, and so I think the movie definitely, like you say, at various times taps into that primal fear of something creepy or being chased by something or being attacked by something and having to defend yourself. So there's a lot of those kind of primal fears in there that definitely fit within the horror sphere.
One thing which I thought was really interesting about this film, because normally in like a horror genre, you'd have the intense moments, and then the characters would escape to somewhere safe, and not calm down, and recoup everything, and that's when they start screaming, thinking he's gonna kill us and everything. But in this movie, there was never any safe area. There's never a safe. Well, I say that, but like there's a sense that they're always on high alert.
Yeah.
There's always a threat.
Yeah.
And just because you can't see it, and just because like a lot of movies play on like only at nighttime or only at daytime or
there's respite. Whereas this this film is if you're going into a film where you want it's interesting because if you go into a film, sometimes you want those highs and lows because it gives contrast. Whereas this film, because of the concept, it didn't really need those highs and lows. So it could, because like you say, they're constantly on high alert. But the way that works out in terms of them having to keep silent all the time, it's kind of like it does that contrasting for you. Because the opposite to a standard horror is when high alert happens is when the things get noisy and kick off. Whereas in this film it's the opposite to that. So it's sort of turning it on its head, and that is quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting when you say like it's a pattern of like sound, because what I'm used to in horror is that you get the jump scare, the high intensity, and then there's the person thinks they've got away, and then there's silence, and then there's the jump scare again. And it's just with this one, because most of it is just silent, it's really hard to actually put yourself in the frame of mind of the generic horror. Generic sort of like, oh, I know what's going to happen now, because you don't know what's going to happen now, because there's nothing leading you to any conclusions.
Although it does, in a traditional like say thriller sense, it does point towards things that are going to be significant. So like it gives the viewer information that they're privy to, that the actors or the characters are not privy to, and obviously that then builds tension for an audience because they can see something coming. They know something bad is going to happen within that thing that you've been shown, but you just don't know how it's going to play out, and that's what sort of builds the tension, and that's what keeps you excited and interesting. But like you say, what's good about this movie is it's just relentless in a sense that it's kind of non-stop.
Even the smallest things in this movie, and I like I say, I'm not really, because we want you to really enjoy it. By all means, listen to this review, and we are talking a lot about it. We want you to enjoy it. I'm not going to say what it is, but even the little thing that happens in the movie, and and it's in comparison to a lot of horror movies, in comparison to what happens to a protagonist in a lot of movies, this is tiny, but the audience feels it. Like you just feel everything.
It's just what I think is great about this movie is the concept, but not just the concept, the execution of the concept. So, like, we know from working with young people being creative, quite often they'll come up with some amazing ideas, and you can imagine that there's a lot of people in trying to break into industry, who have amazing ideas, but the execution isn't there.
Yeah.
And what is like really good about this movie is that it's a real high concept, and it's an intelligent concept, but the execution is done well, because they could have quite easily gone down like a very sort of cheesy sort of horror thriller route.
Yeah.
I was sort of expecting the whole, quite often with a horror film, the army or some specialist unit turns up, and you sort of, I was thinking, are they going to go down that route? Is this going to be something that happens? And, and it doesn't, and it keeps it quite claustrophobic. And so, in terms of the family, so if you think about it, you only see like one human outsider from the family who's alive.
Yeah.
So that again is shows how tight this movie is and how well put together it is.
Yeah.
So it's not relied on creating periphery characters that it can then kill off, because it is just about the family.
Yeah. And
the concept obviously being that they have to be quiet or silent the whole time, and that is like tiring enough to like sort of watch.
Yeah.
And then and then it adds a twist in there that you're like, well, okay, I can see what's coming, and this is going to be a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, so I've heard some people say like, oh, why would you get pregnant while the world's like this? And I don't know. This is so at the point where we see she's pregnant. It's been like over a year, and like people are telling me why would they get pregnant if they're in a world like this? I mean, they've
they run out of condoms is one good reason.
That's one good reason, and it's sort of like, at what point do you stop? What point do you give up? They are homeschooling their children. They're trying to live as much of a normal life as possible, and they are intelligent, and they are trying to approach it with a plan.
Yeah,
and,
they're trying to prepare for it as well, aren't they?
Yeah,
and you see the sort of outcome of that. And again, it's like the tension that builds up with it, because like a baby is going to be quite loud, or you would expect it to be. Although one criticism that I would have with this film is that the birth happens sort of way too quick, and then B, the baby is like one of the quietest babies ever been born as a newborn that I've sort of seen. But then maybe that's just my traditional view of how babies are portrayed in film and television, because I've never actually been in a hospital with a newborn baby. So maybe I'm being overly harsh there.
Yeah. On the special day, you're like, oh wow, the film's right.
yeah.
I
can call it John, and not Jim.
Well,
that's if it's a boy, obviously.
Calling talk about names. I've got a whole concept of this movie.
Yeah,
we're talking about these characters like the mum and dad, and we'll talk about the son and the daughter in a minute. But because we don't know anyone's name, it's kind of interesting the way. And I had to listen to, like, I heard an interview about this film, and they said, "Oh yeah, we don't know anyone's name." I was thinking, "Oh well, yeah, we don't know anyone's name."
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
wow,
I've literally only just thought of that. Yeah,
I thought
as soon as you mentioned it,
that's incredible, and
it's quite clever.
Yeah,
again, quite clever.
And I saw Layer Cake, and when at the end of Layer Cake, he said like, "You don't even know my name." It's sort of like, oh wow, okay, I didn't realize that.
Mind blown.
Yeah, boom.
Yeah. Although Millicent, the actress that plays the daughter, I mean, she does an excellent job in the film, and she's actually deaf in real life as well, which I didn't know.
I was thinking about her character. I was thinking about like, because the dad is really standoffish with the character, and like the son sort of talks about like is it referring to something in the movie. I But I think it's kind of interesting that the son seems a lot weaker than the daughter, and the second time I watched it, I'm thinking, is the dad only focusing on the son because the son is less equipped to handle pressure like situations, or even though the daughter sort of like is deaf and sort of is.
Yeah, it creates tensions, doesn't it, between the family?
Yeah, because they can't even talk it out. Can't even have a discussion. But yeah, because his daughter says, "I'll go," and she's so confident in going, and it's just like, I don't want to go off and basically, yeah, it's just about jumping in. I don't know, it just reminded me it just reminded me of like I don't know, a parent treating like teaching a child how to swim, or a child how to ride a bike, or so like, if you're afraid of it, don't worry, we're just going to get through it together. We're going to do this. And
yeah, I mean, I like this kind of movie that like gets you to think about survival and survivalism in general. What would you do in this kind of situation or this world?
Yeah.
Especially one where you have endless bags of salt to put down.
Yeah.
around. That again, that's perhaps another criticism, or not criticism, just something that's not really explained.
Well, is it salt? Or
I don't know.
Sand, or is it
sand or salt?
Oh, or maybe flour.
They seem to have a lot of it.
Well, they have a whole barn of grain, don't they? So
yeah,
could be flour.
Is it like leftover from that? But what surely they want to. Well, I suppose it's like important for their survival. I just feel like, as a viewer, it might have been good if that had sort of been explained a bit more.
Yeah.
To
where they got it from, or
where it comes from, or how the supply works.
Where you store it, where you got it from, how you rotate it.
Well, because like they had it going all the way into the local town.
Yeah, although it was like 83 days in when we first had it.
Yeah, and they had loads then, and then they had loads 400 days in. So there must be a supply somewhere. Where's it coming from, James? I want to know. Yeah.
I want to see the quiet farming, sort of like just digging up the soil really slowly, really quietly.
Yeah. Like somebody gets tempted to eat like a corn on the cob.
Yeah. And I was I was listening to somebody, and they were talking about like how they get electricity and where to generate it. Surely the generator's making a racket.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, how do you think about that?
No, yeah, there are. Well, I think like you could pick apart any sort of film that has a like high sort of concept thing like this, and I think what was nice about the film was it was like, a tight sort of 90 minutes, and maybe if they'd sort of gone into explaining all the sort of silent generator and the quiet farming and the supply of salt / flour, it might have gone on. It might have dragged on for like too long. Yeah. And I think it's good that it is just a sort of tight 90 minutes of relentless kind of horror thriller action. Yeah. And that I think is one of the huge draws for this film, is that you're not going to be bored watching this film. No. Like it's gonna engage you from the start and throughout. I think
so when we went, I got a sandwich. I got like a toasty, and I was eating like the first half like really easily in the trailers, and then the film came on, and I realized I can only eat this at certain moments.
Yeah.
Everybody.
I saw you being like tactical with it, because you'd seen it. You knew when the loud bits were coming, and then the sandwich came out. Yeah. Whereas the rest of the audience, there was just like the slow popcorn eating, trying to be quiet, and it just wasn't working.
The first 15 minutes, no one realised what the film was like, because we heard people next to us talking, and they were having like soup in a bowl or something.
But I don't. Does that mean that they've not seen the trailer? Maybe.
Not seen the trailer. Well, the whole concept of it actually being really quiet and no one, because at first people were coming in, they were coughing, they were eating popcorn loudly, but then it got to a certain point in the movie where someone was clearly trying to open something really slowly.
Yeah.
And
Quietly,
I heard a couple of people laughing because
of it.
Because of it. So the whole audience were a part of the experience.
And that's great. I think that shows the power of sound when it comes to cinema as well. Because like obviously, what's interesting about this movie is that the sound is taken away a lot of the time. Yeah. So whereas a lot of the time movie making is about what sounds can you put in to enhance the experience. But so I mean, there must have been lots of conversations and lots of creative choices about like when do we put sounds in, when do we just let it be silent, it's sort of I just really like the idea.
It's sort of when it comes to the scary parts, the audience didn't make a noise either. Because they can't make a noise, the characters. So even if there's a jump scare, the characters can't go whoa. Yeah. And I noticed the audience doesn't really make a sound either. Yeah. And I think we are sort of like
it's powerful in that sense.
Yeah, because I'm always like I always try and get on with the character. So like if the character goes underwater, I always try to hold my breath the same amount of time as the character holds his breath. Yeah. There's some films which aren't realistic. I'm talking to you, Casino Royale. It's not realistic whatsoever. But so it's
Did
really
you just pass out?
He's just under there and he's letting all the oxygen out and he's just screaming. And it's like, I don't care that you're James Bond. You're human, okay? Just, that is not a realistic scene.
No.
So I thought it's really interesting. I've had two different audience experiences, and they're both slightly different. And so it'll be interesting if I go in the audience I go into tonight, how different that will be. Yeah. I have a feeling the one I'm going to tonight, I'm going to Covent Garden Cinema. I'm feeling that's going to be silent. No one talking whatsoever. Right.
Intense.
Yeah. So if you want to have a natter, we'll go to recommendations. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we could do. Are they? Because I don't think there's much else to sort of cover.
It's very positive. Our feelings on it. We've been very selective about the amount of stuff we've shared. Because we could share quite a lot more, but to be honest, it's such a positive movie. I think we've covered quite a lot. Unless there's any other points.
No, I mean I think one good way to describe it for me is this idea of it. It's quite tight. It's like both visually and a storytelling point of view. It guides you along using visuals and dialogue, which is obviously a lot is done through sign language, which I think is really well done. Yes. And so, from a storytelling point of view, there is a lot of information that you get visually that adds to just the sign language as well. So it's a really good film in that sense. And then obviously with the use of sound as well, it's a really interesting film to watch. And I think it'd be interesting to see if it sort of gets recognised like through awards in terms of sound and especially
in terms of so there are subtitles in the movie, but the movie does such a good job of communicating through how they are and how they react to each other, and so visual, it doesn't feel like a subtitled movie. So so that I just want to urge people, if even if you don't like reading loads, there's not loads of reading.
And also because a lot is told visually as well, and it's a really good example if you want to sort of learn how to make creative choices as to what to show visually or what to tell through sign language or dialogue. It's a really good example for that.
There's no big conversations. It's all very small snippets of sign language dialogue. I heard that they actually from the sign language community. I heard an interview that sign language community were really happy about the way they use sign language. I didn't feel like actors just replicating sign language. It felt like people actually doing it. It felt like a lot of characteristics in the way they did sign language.
Yeah, because that's good because I thought that was really well done, and so I guess it it's good to have that validation as well.
Yeah.
So recommendation then, James. Who is this movie for?
I think it's for me. For me. First of all, I'll just say who it's not for.
Okay.
It's not for people who like to just have a laugh and be loud in the cinema at all. It's a really good cinema experience, and I would say it's about eliminated fewer than recommending the. I don't know. If you're very loud in a movie and you just like to chat all the way through it and chat about characters, and quite often in horror, in action and horror, you probably get away with it because it's so loud.
You get those laugh out loud moments, or
by all means,
oh my God.
if you react to stuff, like if you can't help how you react to scary stuff, still go. Like
I don't think you should be put off because because it's a really good movie. I mean, I think I would definitely agree with that. I would also recommend this film for anyone who's a fan of kind of survivalist films, anyone who likes those kind of horror/thriller movies. It reminded me a lot of sort of Cloverfield series.
Yeah.
Like both the first one in terms of the survivalist aspect, and the also 10 Cloverfield Lane with is that that's the one where she gets trapped underground with
John Goodman.
I've
not seen it, but I'm aware of it, and I know it's connected.
I thought we went together.
No.
False memory there.
Yeah,
I definitely went. I must have been with George or something. It's really good because it's really claustrophobic. So it's quite similar in that sense that there's not a huge cast. You only see a few people. It's about survival, but it's also about what is kind of going on. So it's got that aspect to it. I maybe recommend it for people who are fans of like Stranger Things.
Yes, definitely.
Not necessarily for the 80s aesthetic. That's not really in this movie, but more for the kind of horror thriller. Not really sure what's going on. It also reminded me of another movie, Stephen King adaptation, The Mist. That they did because I think they did a series of it, but I've not seen that, but I saw the film, and it sort of reminded me of that, like quite relentless, not really knowing quite what's going on, but having to try and adapt to the sort of situation. I think I'd recommend it for people who are sort of fans of those kind of strands of films, but also people like myself who enjoy thriller but maybe don't want to see an out-and-out horror, because I'm not a huge fan of out-and-out horror. I don't necessarily enjoy the feeling of being scared like a lot of people do. But this movie, I think, is for me enough on the thriller side. There's enough to sort of think about. There's enough to kind of keep you interested in terms of like, what would I do in this situation? What's going to happen to these characters? Do I want them to survive? How would I survive? So I think like if you and it's got those tension sort of building moments. So I think I would recommend it for somebody who's not necessarily a fan of horror and wants something that they can think about, and something that's not going to just be you're not just going to be bored because you can see what's coming, or it's just like following tropes or stereotypes. So I think it's got a bit more to it as well.
Yeah, it's so there's hints of horror in it, but it's not. It's like ordering lemon and herb cheese from Nando's and having the peri-peri like salt on top. It's like a little bit of spice, a little bit of horror.
Yeah. I think I'd also recommend this film for somebody who is a student of film as well, because I think it's got a lot that you can deconstruct and think about in terms of how to use sound, visuals, how to use those together, how to create tension, how to build tension, how to take tension away. how to put it back in. There's like I think visually and from a visual and audio point of view, it's got a lot going on. So it's
what story to tell. I mean, the basic content of this movie, you could have come up with like a load of different films.
Yeah, definitely.
And so the fact that they've chosen to do this story first, I've heard the production company are very excited about possibly doing a sequel in the same universe, which is obvious.
Well, it's like anything that's successful, it tends to get a sequel. I wouldn't be surprised if they go down a kind of like. Well, I mean, I suppose there's so many different directions you could take it. It would be interesting to see what they did with it. But what I wouldn't want to see is the kind of, let's do an origin story, and then it becomes like this massive sci-fi film that, takes away from
the story in itself feels like a spin-off, a very good spin-off. It's like, this is the main story. This is what happened to these characters while this main story is going on.
But I think for me, I prefer those kind of stories because they're more contained, more tight. There's less room for, to annoy me. And so I think, I might, a bit like, 10 going back to 10 Cloverfield Lane, with that sort of giving too much away, that film would have been better if it wasn't a Cloverfield film. And it feels like the Cloverfield bit was sort of tapped on at the end. Yeah. And I sort of think, well, I just hope they don't go down the ridiculous, here's a sequel, we're going to have loads of gore and, and they keep it to that sort of nice, like, kind of like insular, very claustrophobic sort of, a few people trying to survive in this messed up world. Yeah.
I'm sort of the opposite to that. To that sort of feeling, because it's as long as they do it, as long as the world and not the characters, they can have a director who does a paint by numbers of horror film in a city of where these creatures are, and then you can also hire these other people because it's just a money making thing. And to be honest, I wouldn't mind if they start spreading out a bit like Marvel. They're hiring all these quirky directors, and they're taking lots of risks with their movies.
I'm not necessarily against taking risks. I'm just against doing generic. Yeah. This is a sci-fi.
But I think there is one very generic. If they do go down the route of sequels, there is one very generic horror film coming up. I can't really see. I think it's great for spin-offs. It's great for the other side. This is a great spin-off movie to a movie that doesn't exist yet. But yeah, I think if they do generic horror, it's gonna sell out. And people with horror, like people know what they're getting. Yeah, like a lot of the trailers for a lot of horror movies, they don't try and trick you into sort of movie. So that's something that I really appreciate about the horror genre. Sometimes it doesn't. A lot of the time, it doesn't trick you. DVDs, they trick you. The DVDs, and they cover the trailers. It's like, best movie ever. You will cry yourself laughing, or cry yourself crying. I don't know. I'm just going on a tangent. But yeah, I wouldn't mind if they made a generic movie. But recommendations, I'd recommend. I'd recommend this to anyone and everyone really. You'll have seen the film, and yeah, you want a decent film to watch. I believe I haven't heard any bad criticisms of it so far. This isn't an action-packed, heavy horror every 5 minutes sort of thing. This is a decent movie with a variety of genres throughout it. So, as long as you're not expecting a paint by numbers, what we just talked about, paint by numbers.
Yeah, or just film, a gore fest.
Yeah, it's not gore at all. The film is done so well that the tiniest thing can make you really feel it. So, yeah, don't expect limbs and blood and like people with half faces and everything. But there is something there for you to be happy about.
Okay, good. Right, let's move on.
Move on.
So this is the section of our podcast where we discuss the TV show. The TV show that we've got for this week is perhaps not not widely known. Because I'm saying that because you didn't know about it until I suggested it. But so this is a program called Divorce, and actually I've stolen the kind of synopsis from IMDb here, which is quite a good one because it really does explain what the show is about, and which states that it's about a couple who goes through a long, drawn-out divorce. So sort of does what it says on the tin there.
Yeah.
So it was created by Sharon Horgan, who is of Catastrophe fame. And so where are you up to, James, and how do you think?
I'm on the final episode of first season.
Right.
I have greatly enjoyed it. I really have. One thing that's really good for me is like I was saying about I Love Dick. The episodes are like half an hour to 40 minutes long. I think half an hour to 40 minutes.
Yeah, they're quite short.
Yeah, and it's just so digestible, and each one is sort of like each one's named. That it's really easy not to lose track of it because each one has each episode is named to sort of like it's named really well. So like one of them is called Mitigator. One of them is called. I know it was really easy for me to keep track. Sometimes when it comes to series, and I'm like trying to remember where I am, I just have to like skip through episodes to find out where I am. One thing I noticed is really well organized and put together.
Yeah.
I have recently, because we talked about love in our first podcast, I recently watched that, and basically there was lots of different relationships in there, and so my view of when I first started watching this series was sort of tainted by my view of because I've been watching Love.
Yeah.
So when I first watching it, I really enjoyed both characters. I thought both characters were good characters.
So the main roles are played by Sarah Jessica Parker and I think Thomas Hayden Church.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people might not know Thomas Hayden Church by name, but I know him from I was going to say Seinfeld then, but it's actually Sideways.
Yeah. Sideways,
not Seinfeld. Sideways. Yeah, which is an amazing film, and I would recommend for anyone and everyone.
And I think he was Sandman.
Yes, he was. Yeah, that was like cash in after he'd done the crossover indie film. Cash in with a Spider-Man role.
I think he. I thought he was really good in that. There's like one really emotional scene that he's in it, and it's even though it's the most slated Spider-Man film there is. There's actually one really nice moment in it.
Well, he was. I thought he was good in everything that I've seen him in, including Spider-Man. So. Also,
Sarah Jessica Parker is really good in this.
Is she? Is she though?
I think she is.
Yeah. I'm not sure. So one of the reasons that I wanted you to look at this show is to just sort of see how you're like the divorce guinea pig. So obviously we're approaching this kind of program from neither of us being married or divorced that we know about.
No.
Okay, it's good together. Yeah, confirmed. So it's interesting because do you relate to it because it's got common sort of relationship themes, or is it difficult to get on board with because you've not been through that emotional experience?
I think it's really easy to get on board with. I think it's really interesting where the two characters. So Sarah Jessica Parker, she has purposely made wrong decisions, and the way she goes wrong is decisions she makes. And then with the male character, so I can't remember his name.
Robert. He's called.
Robert. He goes wrong through just naturally in his personality, and it's sort of like they're both very damaged people.
Yeah.
In a way, and one is very damaged because one is self-implosive, one is. I know it's really interesting to see how from the first scene sort of sets the tone for the movie.
Yeah,
the bathroom
it does.
scene. And it's just like it's yeah, and it's really hard not to enjoy their misery sometimes. Watching them sort of like,
Yeah, you see, I think that's the bit that I find tough about the show, is that sometimes it is so hard hitting that I struggle to like really enjoy it. I struggle to think, do I love this? Like, do I love this show, or do I? It's almost like a yo-yo Marmite show where I'm sort of loving it at moments, and then I'm hating it, and I can't really. I'm struggling to find a level ground with it sometimes, and I think that's okay, because I think that's part of what the show is about.
Well, I love that they're not. Neither character is actually pure evil or pure wrong, or and so basically they'll do something wrong and then they'll regret it last minute and they'll try and pull back, and then it's just this going back.
And then somebody else will react to what they've done, and then they want to sort of take it back, but then they don't because the other person has reacted badly. It's quite clever in that regard.
So on the surface, they feel like they're getting somewhere, but really they're just untangled. They tangle themselves up as quickly as they get untangled. It's sort of like
it's quite clever in that. I think I like it, but the reason I say I think is because there's just that element of doubt that maybe, is this fun?
Well, I think one of the things that I like about it, and just separate, just like make a little breathing room, is just the other actors in the movie, which you don't really see that much. They got so many amazing actors in this TV show, that movie. There's so many amazing actors in this TV show, but they don't highly saturate it. You always see a character for like an episode and a half, but then they'll come back in, and it's and their stories are sometimes as interesting or sometimes more interesting than our main character's story. So it's
a lot of three-dimensional characters in there that make it interesting. So I think I should probably add that the reason that we're looking at this show is that the second season has just come out. I've not seen the whole of the second season yet. You're obviously at the end of the first season. And I think for me, the start of the second season is just a continuation of the first season. So far, in terms of its approach and in this kind of like up and down, like you say, this tangled knot of a relationship, just continues, and like and it is sort of interesting. And I thought it was gonna draw the divorce out a little bit longer, but the first episode of the second season, without too many spoilers, is that they're actually signing the divorce papers.
Well, that's like an episode away, so it's not like
But I think you thought that because for part of the first series, it's kind of like, they do that sort of will they, won't they sort of get back together for a tiny bit. But what's quite good about this show is that you sort of know that their relationship is well doomed from the start.
Yeah, from the start.
And it doesn't let up from that, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well, like with the series Love, they look into like issues in a relationship and things that might happen in a relationship, and this is more like issues getting out of a relationship. Yeah. And how do you cope with that, and how do you combat that? And when it comes to betrayal, I know it's interesting when you see like different programs do approach stuff in different ways. And like, so the idea of like of someone betraying somebody is not so black and white anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think it's
shades of grey. Lots of shades of grey in this show.
I say black and white. Are they, in terms of like, it's not really ethically diverse, is it, this show?
I'm
just trying to. I just said black and white to myself. Just now, and now
you've realised that it's just full of wasps. In their annoying rich people lives.
There's not that much diversity in the show whatsoever.
Yeah. Now that you say that, I'm like, oh, okay. A lot of wealthy white people.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something to criticize, I guess.
It's So I've not been in the Divorce, but I think they are. It's a really interesting show, and it really allows you to see it from each point of view. You can see logic from each point of view, and there's no simple evil character.
Yeah.
And you can sort of see logic, desperation, and and they're trying to respect each other. Whether they do underneath fully.
Yeah, it's interesting that they sort of like they try and I imagine what you see is what happens in a lot of divorces is that at the start they want it to be mutual, they want it to be amicable and everybody to get along and the kids to not be affected by it, and as you know, and it's all like reactionary because somebody does something and then somebody reacts to that and then somebody reacts to the reaction and it all sort of unfolds and gets messy, and just watching that play out is quite interesting. But for me, that's why it can be quite difficult at times as well, because you're sort of watching people, and it is that uncomfortable humour that you get from that, which is good. Like I really enjoy it, but then, like I say, at times, sorry, I'm repeating myself a bit here, but you know, at times it sort of makes me feel a bit uncomfortable as well.
I don't think they say these lines, but I feel like it's like I didn't mean to hurt you this way. It's sort of like they didn't mean to hurt you. I did mean for this thing to happen, but not like this. Not how you react. I think that seems to happen quite a lot. It's sort of like they're sorry that the other person knows about it, but not actually sorry for what they've done, and that's I feel like that's like multiple things. That's a common theme that I keep thinking about throughout the show.
There's also the blame game as well. Like people blaming other people for things that they've either initiated or consciously done, but then it's like, is it unconscious? Is it not?
But it's even
in that sense.
It's like it just go around in a circle. But then they'll get to a point where they'll accept the blame, and they'll accept the blame, and they'll hold on to it, and then someone will explain how they're not to blame, and then they're no longer they're not the enemy anymore. And then, so it's
clever. It's clever. I think it's a very clever TV show. And I think that it does a good job of, like you say, nobody in this show is like painted in the best sort of light or picture. I'm mixing my metaphors again now.
But everybody's two-dimensional until they focus on them and they become more three-dimensional. At the moment, the kids are two-dimensional to me. But the way they've treated all the other characters and how they've started to expand them over, I've got no doubt that in the second season, I'm going to start enjoying seeing the kids characters a lot more, and they're going to dive into them more. And so
that's a good prediction.
I
think that some of that does come in. I haven't seen enough of it to see how much, but there's definitely that in there, so you can look forward to that. So Divorce is available on, well, we've been watching it through Now TV, haven't we? So I imagine it's sort of available for Sky customers, so people could probably watch it on catch up. And so if somebody wanted to do that, James, who would you recommend it?
On paper, this wasn't a show for me. I mean, you asked me to watch it. Like I say, I'm not really a big fan of Sarah Jessica Parker, and I didn't really expect to enjoy it, and it really surprised me. So it's really hard to give a recommendation when I was surprised. Like it was good.
Again, it's maybe one where it's easier to recommend who it's not for. It's such an easy watch. It really is. It's such an easy watch, and that even though it will have you at the edge of your seat, it will have you like, there's no tension or anything like in it, but that it's a really well written show. And if you get up to get a cup of coffee, or if you're not really watching it properly, then you could miss some stuff, and it's quite disappointing. So it's not really a background. It's not really something to have in the background. No, you do need to sort of concentrate because of that, there's so much going on in terms of people doing something and then somebody reacting to that, and you sort of need to keep up with it.
And they're not obvious. The jokes aren't obvious.
Yeah, it's not a laugh out loud. So I wouldn't recommend it for somebody who just wants Big Bang Theory laughter track.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a ba-boom. You're not going to get those kind of jokes. I suppose I would recommend it for somebody who likes the kind of dry or black humour, who likes dark humour, maybe a bit twisted at times. So I think if you enjoy those kind of the Office, those kind of deadpan sort of humour as well, it is in there, but it's definitely not a laugh out loud show. It is quite dramatic at times, and uncomfortable to watch at times, which is why I find it not easy to watch.
I think the intro is a really good taster. That introduction bit, he's knocking on the door, he's talking about and I just think the first scene is a really good
indicator,
because it shows how distant they are in terms of communication. It shows how I don't know. It just has a bit of everything in that nice sort of first 2 minutes.
Yeah,
I thought
I definitely wouldn't recommend this show for somebody who's a fan of Sarah Jessica Parker in terms of her sort of previous roles, because I suppose in some ways, Sex and the City, I think it depends how you look at it, how you look at her character, because in this, her character is likeable in some ways, but not in others. And you're certainly not going to get behind her character as much as you would in roles that you've seen her in other things, because everybody does something that's a little bit horrible or annoying or
things really interesting about
difficult.
Her character, she realizes her mistakes very quickly. She'll keep making them. She'll keep making them by all means. But I think there's something really relatable to her, and more relatable than Sex and the City. I
suppose it's perhaps a bit more real in that sense.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I felt like people thought about Sex and the City. Oh, it felt real because someone's having a private conversation with the audience. It's like that, that diary monologue and and emotional distresses. But I think each character is very relatable. Each character, not just the main two characters.
Yeah.
Because the more this goes on, the more main characters there seem to be in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good. I think. Yeah. So I think if you're a fan of Sharon Horgan's work, then you probably enjoy this show as well, because it's in a similar vein. I don't know how much input she's got to the actual writing of it, but I do think it is definitely quite similar in that nobody's a lovable character. Everybody's got good and bad aspects to them, and you're just watching a world where they interact and events sort of transpire.
It's really interesting. Especially if you look at we spoke about Love a couple weeks ago, and that took a stereotypically good person, and you saw the bad side of the stereotypical bad person. You really saw the good side of him. This one's really interesting. It starts with Grey. It doesn't. There's my view of the characters at the first episode haven't completely changed as my view of the characters. In the last end of the series, it's just we've just seen more of the same thing.
Yeah, because people always talk about character development, and this is almost the opposite of that. What would that be? I don't know. Character destruction.
Yeah.
Because they're just sort of breaking down barriers about themselves the whole time, and they're trying to figure themselves out in a sort of middle-aged setting.
I feel like we have not really seen the truth. They don't really understand their true selves yet, and it's sort of but now
again,
they're no longer in this relationship.
Yeah.
So who am I?
Who am I? Yeah. But
But it's not like a whirlwind adventure of it's. Yeah, I love the way they approach it.
But that's what I mean. They're not going to build anybody up. Yeah. It's just It's more about breaking people down and sort of seeing what that looks like. It's good. So I think we'd recommend it. So I don't think you need to have been through a divorce to watch this show or to appreciate it. I think if you have been through a divorce and you have got kids, you might appreciate it on a level that that I'm not getting at the moment, and I think that would add an extra layer to it. So I think if you've got teenage kids and you've been through those kind of adult relationship breakdowns, then I think it's going to have that added appeal. But I definitely think like you don't have to have been through that experience to appreciate it as a show.
And like I said before, the great thing about it is just how the show introduces itself. You don't need to wait to like the first half of the first season or second season in order to properly get into it. It's actually consistently good from the first episode. Yeah,
so. and I think it follows that through into the second season as well of what I've seen of it so far.
Good.
So okay, so looking forward to next week then, James. What? I say what? Yeah. Is it Love, Simon? Are we going to do
Simon? Yeah.
What is it with all these movies and shows with love in the title?
I don't know.
It's a bit of a lovers in the air. Yeah. Sort of. There's a theme.
If we make it a Christmas, James, we'll do a special Love Actually special.
Will we though? Yeah. Maybe if Love Actually 2 comes out.
Yeah.
That must be June soon. Must be.
It's going to be.
Okay.
If film wise, we'll watch Love. We'll watch Love
Simon. Actually, we can do that.
Yeah, we'll actually love to watch Love Simon.
Love Simon.
Yeah.
Which have you already seen?
I've seen it, but
I'll
watch it
racing
again.
Ahead.
I'll watch it again. I always try and watch the new movies.
Yeah.
And TV show. I think we're gonna do
a curveball. Yes.
Jessica Jones.
Yeah. No. We're going to leave Jessica Jones for a couple of weeks, just because we did The Punisher quite recently, and I've still not finished it. Okay. So my suggestion was this BBC programme that no one has ever heard of. Yeah. Perhaps. No, I said that's unfair. It's a new programme. It's on BBC iPlayer at the moment. It's called 800 Words, and I think it is definitely worth a watch. So this is a similar show to Divorce. Like I've seen some of it. I'm suggesting you go and watch it, James, and then we'll have a chat about it.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see either. I'm
not even the guinea pig in this scenario. This is like you've drank some poison and you're like, oh, Jim, try a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm gonna die, I'm not gonna die alone. It's just yeah.
Okay. I guess we'll see what. I mean, in terms of like Love, Simon, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to a good coming of age, coming out, film about somebody who is a teenager and who wants to come out, doesn't quite know how to do it. I'm hoping that it's from the trailer, there's going to be some good humour in there. I'm hoping that, it'll be a good sort of teen rom-com for a modern day audience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give away anything that my impressions of it. The fact I'm seeing it again is sort of giving it away.
Yeah, a little bit.
But yeah, it's I think it's a really interesting movie, and so if you want to see it before a reaction, feel free to. Feel free to.
Yeah, well, I think it would be good if people were listening to the podcast, going out and watching what we're going to see and following along. That would be amazing. So,
but it's,
mum and mum.
Yeah.
Get to the cinema, and then you can listen to our podcast and enjoy it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Along with
it's
our other, mass audience that's out there listening to us.
Yeah, and obviously there's loads of people. So I'll and so with next week we're gonna think about what's coming out the following weeks.
Yeah,
we'll try and pick some good films.
So just going back to 800 words just before we wrap it up. So this is, like I say, this is a BBC programme, and just to give you a bit of a premise, it's about an Australian family who move to New Zealand to set up a new life. I don't want to say much more than that. I should probably say to the listeners, the sort of reservations that we're having with it is that it is a daytime TV show. So I think it's being aired on BBC at like 2:15 in the afternoon. Because it's holiday time, I managed to catch it. I thought this was an interesting show. I relate to it for loads of different reasons, and I'm going to talk about that next week. But I don't want to say too much now. But hopefully it's a bit of a comedy. I think hopefully there's enough that I've said there that gauges your interest, James.
I mean, like I say, you said we agreed to watch Divorce, and I wasn't really looking forward to it, and that just surprised me. So I'm trying to go with it with an open mind, and so I'm gonna go ahead with it, and I'll let you know if it's a bunch of trash or if I enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay. So tune in next week. So hope you've enjoyed episode 4.
Yeah, and hopefully we've tightened up a little bit.
Yeah. Not the epic that it was last week.
Yeah.
Unless I keep talking just to push it over.
So we'll say goodbye.
Yeah. Cheers.
So, thanks. Bye.